They say we're loud, opinionated, afraid, telling us to hush, dim our historical light. But darlings, we're the heartbeat, sharp and keen, unveiling the truth behind the silver screen.
History harpies, hear us roar. Through the ages we explore. Fashion, film, and TV's lore. Spilling tea.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of History Harpies. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Christine.
And this week we are going to be talking about all things senior year. We are in the throes of graduation celebrations, all the graduation stuff. We have prom, we have parties,
Pool
we
parties,
have all sorts of
milestones.
stuff. So we felt it would be appropriate to talk about some new content that addresses senior year, some of the older content that it was based upon, and then some senior year classics.
And I really feel like as Gen Xers, we have been especially lucky with content dealing with high school, senior year, dances.
Absolutely.
All of this good stuff.
Absolutely.
And I think we should also note that because there's so much stuff to talk about with high schools and senior year, that this is actually only going to be part one of a two-part
a new innovation in History Harpies.
A new innovation.
A two-parter. But this is a rich topic, and it's one that's very dear to my heart, and some of my favorite movies, which I think is true of anyone growing up in the 80s, have to deal with high school, senior year, and high school drama, college admissions, the love.
What comes next? What have we learned in high school? What are we going to do in college?
The teacher that made a lasting impression.
The teacher who was weird and creepy.
All of it. All of it. And of course, the dress.
Yes. The dress, the entire corsage apparatus of prom, all this good stuff. And actually, just a tiny detail before we start talking. I would like to point out that I think one of the biggest differences between Gen X teachers and the teachers of today is that our teachers could smoke in school.
Absolutely. And with us.
And with us.
In my high school, we had a place called the Quad, which was in the cafeteria. It was an outdoor space in an indoor space where students and teachers smoked together.
Those were the days.
Those really were the days.
I mean, it was totally
bonding. I won't even
bonding.
get into the places where we drank together. But there was all kinds of smoking goodness that happened in those days.
I really miss that.
That now, unfortunately, we are done with. So anyway, so Christine, how has your week been going?
Well, this is thematically appropriate that it has been a week full of ending of 8th grade things for my kids, and so a couple of baccalaureates, and it's always really cute to see 8th graders doing little graduations. Not as cute, of course, as like kindergartners doing a graduation.
No.
But a couple of pool parties for my kids, stuff, awards, all of this good stuff. It's been kind of exhausting, but really fun. And I have high schoolers now. Which is amazing.
Which is absolutely unbelievable. It is unbelievable to me to think that you have high schoolers.
I know.
Yeah. Well, I have a graduating senior, which
exciting.
is also unbelievable. So have been to the same awards things, graduation on Wednesday, but one of the cuter traditions that will be happening on Tuesday is he will walk around the elementary school that he went to in his cap and gown with the little kids who are graduating from 5th grade.
That is very cute.
Which is very cute. So graduation abounds in both of our households, and this is a busy but fun time of year.
It is.
Let me ask you a question. What does one wear? What are you wearing to graduation?
What do you mean?
Well, like what, or baccalaureate or celebrations.
Well,
what is appropriate graduation outfitting?
That is an excellent question. Because, as you know, Lauren, my kids go to 2 different schools.
Right.
And I feel like the expectations for dress are very different at both of these schools.
Right.
So I'm going to say very plainly that at one baccalaureate, I was wearing a sort of simple dress. And of course, I was the worst dressed person there.
Okay.
So then I amped it up a little bit for my other child's baccalaureate.
Right.
Dressed up a little bit more. A nice dress that I was wearing for the very first time. Loved it. And I looked over the top, overdressed, because there were lots of people just wearing like t-shirts and shorts.
Interesting.
And so, of course, I'm bad at kind of getting this right, but I think always a nice dress.
A nice dress. Okay.
A nice dress.
All right. And the problem with graduation is that it invites the day dress, which is a really difficult fashion look to nail, in my opinion. I can do the cocktail dress, but for me, the day dress is sort of like, you don't want too many flowers, and you don't want it to look like a nightgown either.
And you don't want it to look like you are wearing it to work.
No.
Like, it can't look office.
No, it can't look office. It has to be some combination of something you might wear, I guess, to church.
Yes, that is a good guide.
But although I don't go to church, but I know what people wear to church. I see them walking around in church wear, and I would assume that translates to graduation wear.
Yes, no, I think that is exactly it.
Do you wear a hat though?
No,
not to graduation.
No. I mean, you could. Right, you could. I'm
not wearing a hat, but I do feel like there will be some people there with a hat.
Yeah, no, I would think so too. And of course, again, you could do it. I will say that I was really happy because when I went to the baccalaureate where I was underdressed, and I really don't think I hallucinated this. I think that this actually happened.
Right.
When we were going up to the altar, because there was kind of a worship element to this baccalaureate, as you know.
Right.
A woman leaned over and whispered to me, "I love your dress." And I really was thinking, did I hallucinate that? Did it happen? I was like, oh, thank you.
You nailed it.
I felt great.
You nailed it.
I felt great. And I love the dress.
No pun intended.
Like, no pun. That was a fantastic pun. Congratulations. That was really great.
Sometimes I do it.
I'm so glad that's like memorialized.
Sometimes I do it right.
That was terrific.
Yeah,
that was absolutely terrific. So,
anyway. Okay. So, to my surprise, and I would say delight, I learned when I turned on Netflix that my ultimate favorite book growing up, which is Forever by Judy Blume, and as a Philly girl, I have a very special relationship to Judy Blume, who grew up in northern New Jersey, not too far from where I grew up. There is actually a rest stop named after Judy Blume if you drive on the New Jersey Turnpike, which we frequent quite often. And so Forever was one of these books that I cherished and I read in maybe elementary school, but definitely middle school, and read many, many, many times, as did all of my girlfriends and all of my camp friends and everyone that I knew. And we read it under the covers and at each other's houses, and we talked about it. And so the idea that it would be coming out as a reimagined Netflix series was very, very interesting to me.
Agreed.
And I dove right in, and then with this whole senior year theme, figured that it would be really ripe time to talk about both versions of Forever, the book and now this series on Netflix.
So both of them, of course, are talking about senior year, as you say, preparations for college, but also the intertwining of those things with having really your first real relationship, falling in love, sexual exploration, which we're not going to talk about too much this part.
No.
We'll talk about it more in our next episode. And I think what probably a lot of us expected from this Forever series was that it would hew pretty closely to the book.
Yes.
And what, of course, was a big shock is that there really aren't many similarities at all.
No. So the backstory, or rather the context around the new series, is that it was, quote, inspired by Forever, and Judy Blume herself is a producer on the series. There's definitely DNA in the new series from the original Forever. However, beyond those things, the two probably could not be more dissimilar. So we just wanted to point out a few things in the two that link together and that connect.
And there are, again, very few of them.
Very few.
So in both cases, we have a young couple.
Yes.
In the original book, it is Michael and Catherine.
Right.
In the series, it is Keisha and Justin.
Right.
And in both cases, they are students who go to different high schools.
And they meet at a New Year's Eve party.
And not only a New Year's Eve party. I don't know why this detail was retained, but a New Year's Eve fondue party.
Oh, right.
Who knows why the fondue kept on.
Okay.
But we have fondue in both.
Okay.
So meet and then have a relationship. This is one of the other similarities, of course, again, who knows why this is retained, is that in both cases, the boys name their penises Ralph.
Correct.
This is a specific, someone loved that detail from the book.
Someone loved it.
Because it stays put.
It stays. There is a forever necklace exchanged that is important.
Meaningful
to the female characters and the male characters that are gifting this necklace. And beyond that, they break up.
And sorry, spoiler alert.
They break up.
In both cases, book and series.
Both cases, they break up. Beyond that, that's about it.
So maybe the most obvious thing in terms of differences that we need to talk about, one of them at least, is length of time that we are talking about.
Right.
So the book is very short. Right, it can be read in a few hours.
It can be read in the time it takes to maybe watch 2 episodes of the series.
So, and that's even if you are reading the entire book and not just reading basically the good parts, the sex scenes.
Just skip to the sex.
Again, even if you're not just dog-earing the pages, right, and reading the good stuff. So we have an 8-episode long Netflix series, if I remember.
Yes, which documents an 18-month long relationship. So we get junior year and senior year with Justin and Keisha.
Yes, and just a few months in the case of Michael and Catherine, where they start dating New Year's Eve. They get into a relationship fairly quickly. And then by the summer, they are broken up, only to see each other once more when they run into each other. So we have a very different pace of the relationship. And with Forever the TV series, because it is so long, there's lots of breaking up, making up over and over and over again.
And most importantly, unblocking and blocking. There is so much use of technology, appropriate and fitting to our digital age, right? Yes. But most of the breaking up and making up is done via text, block, secret text message. Did you know there was a secret message you could leave that no one knew about in voicemail?
Had no idea.
And no clue. Okay, there's so much that you need to know about your phone in terms of watching this thing to really understand the dynamics between these two. Of course, Michael and Catherine are just old-fashioned landlines, letters written from camp, and seeing each other IRL.
And very much the sense, right, that they are not having that it is a special thing when they see each other in person.
Yes.
Right? And that their relationship is dependent upon this sort of IRL, these particular exchanges, these moments together. And so all told, and this is actually something that comes up in the book, where Catherine says, I've only seen this guy 5 times in my life, right? How can I be so madly in love with him already?
Right.
But nevertheless, right, we do get a sense very much of this incredible depth of this relationship so quickly, which again, Forever the series is not interested in a deep relationship immediately.
No.
Right? A connection. Yes, a connection.
And the other thing about the book is that because so much of the book is about sexual awakening, sexual realizations, and finding places to have sex, that most of the chapters really are isolated to these secret places that Michael and Catherine can be alone, whether it's his sister's apartment, whether it's somebody's house when the parents aren't home, and because they do not have FaceTime, and because they do not have, they have landlines, but it's also clear they live with their families that are also using the landlines. We don't have 5 different phones, 5 different people around. So
the younger sister is eavesdropping on the phone call.
There's a lack of privacy that is really important to the development of the relationship. And Justin and Keisha, because the relationship unfolds over a longer time, but also because they do have their own phones, they do have more privacy, and they can FaceTime at night. They can quote sleep together. There's a scene where Keisha is sleeping and Justin is watching her over the phone, which is a very intimate thing, actually. But that could never have happened with Michael and Catherine.
Correct. And so we also then have, of course, one of the most important differences. We have the difference in the series, the difference of class and the difference of race.
Right.
And obviously in the book Forever, it is very much emphasized that these are two very similar kinds of families.
Yes.
Right? That in the book, Michael and Michael's parents are depicted as being maybe a little bit more conservative, not as maybe sort of hippie-ish, but again, same sort of background, same sort of schools.
They're both going to similar colleges.
There's an immediate connection in that Catherine's friend's cousin goes to school with Michael, knows him personally, and so this is a link. But the idea that basically all of these spaces are very familiar to them, sort of the people that they know in these communities. And of course, this is one of the major plot points in Forever the series, that even though these families know each other from Keisha and Justin going to elementary school together, that they're basically,
very,
in terms of class, very different.
And that the structure of the family is different because Keisha has a single mom. She doesn't have any siblings. She has a kind of neighborhood family. She has cousins. She has her grandfather. Her father appears eventually, but he's not
He's
around.
off in the Dominican Republic playing baseball.
He's not around for most of it. Whereas Justin has a more traditional nuclear family. They're very wealthy.
Very hands-on mother. Very controlling mother.
Very hands-on and controlling mother. And Keisha's mother is very hands-on too, but in a
different way.
very different,
in a different way.
And money is no object for Justin's family, and Justin is college bound and it will be paid for full freight by his family. Keisha is also college bound, but depends on scholarships and a lot of grit and her track performance and things like that. So they both have aspirations for sure, but there's a lot of added details to the differences between their families. Also, Justin has ADHD, which is a really important plot point in his struggles, and he's not as academically motivated, whereas Keisha is, she's in the hustle, she's in it to get this Howard scholarship, she's
we see the montages of her she's like working out,
she's all the things, and it's very different than Michael and Catherine, who do seem more or less interchangeable in the kinds of ambitions they have and the kinds of things they want to do. You actually never even know what Michael and Catherine kind of want to do later in life. But Keisha and Justin are very different in their personality types.
Yes. And so, but that also brings up for me something that to me is the most egregious difference between the series and the book. And that is the book is unapologetically Catherine's story.
Yes.
It is told from her point of view.
Yes.
Right? We understand everything through her. The question is, how does she feel about the relationship? How is she directing the course of the relationship? Is she comfortable with the sexual component of it? And it is, I don't want to say the opposite in the show, but in a sense you get the kind of feeling often that Justin really is the focus of the series.
I felt that Justin was the protagonist of the series because so much of it is focused on his family, his family's expectations, whether or not he can kind of balance life in the way that his family wants, and then the impact of Keisha on him. Whether Keisha's going to be the center of things for him, whether he can kind of move beyond just this relationship and follow his goals or even identify his goals. And then there's more layering in terms of racial expectations of what it means to be a black man and models for him, and whether he's going to be more like his father, who's a creative type, who's a chef, or his mother, who is some sort of finance executive. I mean, we know she went to Wharton. She does something fancy, and again, we don't really ever see her. We don't ever see her at work.
We don't.
And so because we don't know what she does, we know it's something fancy. We know it's something that has helped the family to thrive financially, and that she again has been through white institutions and has worked really, really hard to succeed at Ivy League or, those kinds of institutions. So, but we don't know what she does.
We don't know what she does. It's only mentioned that she went to Wharton. near the very end of the series, right? We keep hearing about Northwestern because she wants Justin to go to Northwestern.
Right.
But we also, and correct me if I'm wrong, we don't know anything about her class background.
No.
And so certainly we hear with the dad, right, where the dad says, all right, again, you know, my grandfather was picking cotton, and and he says, right, you're first generation, right? I didn't go to college, you know,
and it's an amazing scene. It
really, yes,
that's
I agree.
a very, very moving and an amazing scene to me when his father says that.
And what I especially liked about that scene is that you do, because of course so often you have this binary, right, of sort of, you know, and as you know, I'm a first generation person, but you have this binary of sort of the first generation college student who's sort of like impoverished, you know, versus again the sort of wealthy kid, you know, who's but obviously what we see there is something so complicated. The father is successful. Right. He's opening multiple restaurants, like Vegas, Atlanta, you know, super successful, but he didn't go to college, right? And as you say, right, he's this creative person, but so he can say, you know, this incredibly meaningful, you know, it is so important to me that you are going to college, right? That this is not something any man in your family has ever done. And so in a sense, because that scene was so, I think, profound and touching, I actually did then sort of want a little bit more about, well, okay, where the mother, what's the mother's name? Okay, obviously Karen Pittman is the actress who's so amazing, but like I don't remember the character's name. We should have looked this up. But you don't have any sense of like, okay, was she a first generation
But then I got
person?
the sense from the Martha's Vineyard trip, which she goes to with her brother is there.
Yeah, that's true.
And
yes.
he talks about Howard and that family has gone to college. I don't know that. I don't know that for sure, but that is the suggestion. They're in that pretty significant house in Martha's Vineyard. She's there with her quote sister. It's not her real sister.
Yeah, I was kind of confused about the family relationships.
But her brother was there.
Yeah, her brother's definitely there.
And the Uncle Charlie.
Yes.
Who gives Justin this talk, right, about...
And says you're never going to the NBA.
But also says to him, you should go to Howard, find yourself, and then use the white networks
and go
later. And which is, of course, in real contrast to what Karen Pittman wants. And I found that to be really interesting as well, because there were... But what I took away from Martha's Vineyard is that it's the mother's side of the family, and that they have gone to college. Although I have no actual factual evidence that that's true from anything in the show.
Yes, and you know, even though the show, of course, was, in my view, way too long, and actually should not have been 8 episodes, that was something where I really did want, again, sort of more nuance, because it is so crucial, right? That she wants her son. She wants Justin to basically replicate her own experience. She's incredibly overbearing. She's extremely unsympathetic, right? Super strict, super controlling, and absolutely, and this is this sort of stereotypical, you know, senior in high school who's like, I don't know what I want to do, and the mom is coming in, right? You're doing the tutoring, you're doing the extra stuff, you're doing the lessons, and this is your only option. And so I think because she was so unsympathetic, right, that was part of the reason why I wanted more, you know, just a little kind of taste of, is she, again, why is she so invested in this kid, again, replicating her exact sort of life choices?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It is. And again, just to draw a comparison to the book, we know that Catherine's parents are in love. We know that Catherine's father is a hottie, right? And the mother like gets a bikini and is trying to keep his interest, and there's that. But the involvement of her parents certainly is nothing like the involvement of the adults in the Netflix series. And we do get that double layered show where we learn a lot about the adults, we learn a lot about the kids. There are scenes where the adults are doing their own thing, where kids aren't in it. Maybe they're just talking about it, but it is a very, very different narrative than these two teenagers falling in love, and that's the sole focus, etc. The other thing, of which is, you know, lots of reviews have talked about, is the change in locale, which of course has a lot to do with not just the love story and the overall arc, but also the senior year experience itself. So the senior year experience in New Jersey, right, is one that is much more contained. I mean, they go skiing and they do some stuff, but they're mainly hanging around people's basements. They're playing board games. They're
rec room.
I don't know if they even go to the mall. But in the series, they do a lot of stuff. They're
Yes.
all over
Yes.
LA. They are in food trucks. They're at concerts. They go to Martha's Vineyard. The global or the scale of it, the geographical scale of it is much broader, and the high school experience is much broader in terms of not just thinking about urban America, thinking about race, thinking about all these things. And again, Catherine and Michael have access to New York City. We just don't see them in it.
No, we see Catherine in New York City.
Well, we see Catherine
Yes.
by herself.
by herself,
visiting
not them
her.
together as
we
a
don't
couple.
see them as a couple.
Yes.
The way that we see Keisha and Justin walking along
Yeah.
and going to sneaker stores
Yeah.
or whatever they're doing, hanging out like teenagers, but hanging out in these very public urban spaces that, adds another level of dimension to the show.
But then we also, I mean, one of the other differences, it seems to me, that is important is that both Keisha and Justin are attending private school.
Right.
And obviously it is framed very much, and this was actually something I will admit I didn't quite understand. It was framed very much, even with Justin, who is from such a wealthy family,
Yes.
framed as if like this is his only possibility, right,
Yes.
of going to an Ivy League school. And I think, and in part, sort of the focus on basketball to me at the beginning of the
Yes.
show, right? It wanes after a while, after we get
Yes.
that kind of NBA, come to Jesus moment. But it was so bizarre to me that you have this unbelievably wealthy kid who has this beautiful house in Los
Yes.
Angeles, right?
And
With
then
the pool
right.
and everything. And again, the beautiful house in Martha's Vineyard. But we still have this kind of narrative of like, the kid needs to go to private school. He needs to get a basketball scholarship. He needs to be basically in a white majority space in order for him to kind of have this chance to go to Northwestern.
Yes. Well,
I was like,
and
I'm not
in
kind of
some ways that echoes
where he's a
the-
legacy.
And
where
in
he's
some
a
ways,
legacy.
that echoes the OC when Marissa
Yes.
goes
Yeah.
to the quote, public school, and
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
complete like dirtbag public school, and you wonder why in Orange County in this like super wealthy neighborhood she would be zoned for this like
that
Fleabag high school. And again, it's not just a question of public school, but it's a question of this series takes place in
2018.
2018.
Right, yeah.
So the availability or the variety, and even with someone who has ADHD, right? The idea that Justin would only be able, he can afford anything.
Yeah.
So the idea that he would only be able to go to this one kind of more generic private school and wouldn't have a public school that was for kids in his socioeconomic strata, or that there wouldn't be a school for kids who think outside the box, who are neurodivergent,
alternative education,
that there wouldn't be, and again with a mother like that who is on it. I mean, who is
on it. Do the research, knows the stuff.
She's a helicopter mom.
Yeah.
She says it herself, right? And that she wouldn't have him somewhere that he would not only maybe be more comfortable racial in terms of racial dynamics, but also in terms of the learning dynamics.
Yes.
He would be such an outsider, and that basketball, again, I mean, he has the three, which is great, but he's not going to be a superstar the way that some of the other athletes that are at the school are. And then there's this pathway for him to get into Northwestern, which we never quite understand academically what that is. But I guess it's him just like doing okay in his classes, like having a tutor.
I have to say, the essay was not good. We both know how important the essay is in applying to college.
We do know
that essay was not good.
We do know the essay was not good.
I'm sure that Northwestern gets very many essays that say, my ADHD is my superpower.
Right.
But, so I wanted something a little bit. But again, he has a legacy. He's a legacy.
He is a legacy. And he's a sweet guy.
He's a sweet guy. I was a big fan of Justin.
I was a huge fan of Justin.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially pre-haircut.
Yes.
Because I wasn't crazy about the haircut.
Well, I just think, he's a very handsome guy. He's a very charismatic actor.
And the character was very sweet.
Very
and
sweet.
Very sympathetic.
And in a lot of ways, what I really liked about the relationship between those two is that it was an attempt to modernize the story, but not hit us over the head with the typical 2025 high school themes. They were sweet, they were innocent, although some really bad stuff happened to Keisha, particularly with the internet video. But this wasn't a school shooting, like all sorts of super, super depressing and
post-pandemic.
troubling. Yeah, I mean, like it had the sweetness of Michael and Catherine in it for me. And it had the innocence and the kind of fumbling around and how to talk to somebody, and Justin not having a girlfriend before and really being inexperienced and awkward in relationships in general, which his friend says, everyone thinks you're kind of weird, and that he had to kind of come into himself. In that way, I feel like, yes, he was much more like Catherine in the book. Yes. That he had to kind of come into himself, even though he had a much longer span of time to do it.
Yes, and it is significant, it seems, that out of our sort of four characters here, Michael in the book is not a virgin, right? So in the TV show, they both are virgins, even though he assumes that she is not. Actually, he thinks that Keisha is not a virgin. But obviously, so much a part of the book is Catherine really coming to terms with the idea of losing her virginity, what she is comfortable with, what she is not comfortable with. And one of the things, speaking of sort of 2025 things, one of the things that is interesting and different, right? We have the question of sort of birth control, again, sort of taking control of this relationship, and the question of consent. And one of the interviews that I read, I think it was with the creator, which he said, well, consent is one of these things that we talk about all the time now. That was not so much the case when the book was originally written in 1975 or whatever it was. And I actually thought it was then really ironic, because when Justin first kisses Keisha in this closet, he just kisses her. Right. Whereas in the book, Michael actually says to Kath, like, can I kiss you? And I was like, well, again, one of these things that is maybe a little bit more complicated. But then obviously, and you and I talked about this a little bit before we started talking the podcast, what is so striking to me, right, because the book is from Catherine's perspective, she takes control of making an appointment at Planned Parenthood, going into the city, getting the pill. Michael doesn't know about it. She has not discussed this with him before. Maybe not the best idea, but whatever. It's her choice. It's her body. That's the whole point of that episode. Yes. And that she has a close relationship with her grandmother, who is a practicing lawyer.
Gave her these pamphlets.
And so it's this very kind of open thing. She's making an informed decision. She has had this conversation. And as I told you, I thought it was so striking that, again, in our sort of 2025 program, the birth control conversation in the show is so old-fashioned, right? Yeah, Dad to going to the son and saying, do you have any condoms? Right. Here, have some. Put them in your wallet. And so, again, it's one of these really sort of topsy-turvy things where I'm like, well, wait a minute. Wouldn't we expect the 1975 moment to be the dad saying, here they are? And the 2025, the young woman going to Planned Parenthood. But, of course, it's the exact opposite.
It is.
And so that was something where I think in terms of the sexual relationship too, one more thing I want to say, and then I'll shut up about it for a second, is that obviously in Forever the Book, we have this incredibly clear progression. Yes. Right? What Gen X would basically say, right, from sort of first base, right, going all the way. Right. And it goes sort of over time. Whereas with Keisha and Justin, their very first date, she's going to basically like go down on him in a movie theater, right? Which he
Alanis Morissette,
Alanis Morissette. That's so funny. And then they kind of sort of then when they eventually start having this relationship again, they have sex, right? So it's not this sort of smooth, linear path. No. It's sort of, I don't want to say all over the place, but you know what I mean.
But I also think that a lot of that, and it's not like blame the internet or blame the digital age, but I think a lot of that does have to do with the blocking, the unblocking. Yeah. I mean, him laying in that tent and listening to her messages, right? It's sort of like foreplay for him, right?
Good point.
And he is getting excited and he is going to see her, and he knows that when he sees her, he's already prepped the space.
Emotional heights.
Right. Yes. When he sees her and he throws the bike, to the side.
Big, classic running towards each other.
And you have this moment and you know that's when they're going to have sex. Yes. Because it's been building, obviously it's been building for her her all the way to Martha's Vineyard.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. For months.
For months, but then the plane ride.
Yes.
From
and
LA.
trying to find him for days.
Right.
And,
I mean, she's got a bike and 2 buses. I mean, this girl is into him, right? She's got a bike ride and 2 buses she has to take to get to the place. And she doesn't even know if he's going to be there, right? She just goes to this basketball,
looking.
where people play basketball and hopes he's there. Yeah. And he, of course, or somebody looks like him, but then later she finds him. But the point of all this is that the climax is happening separately and in some ways off screen with digital devices and imaginations of what's going to happen. And then when they finally do see each other, there's this explosion of passion and of reuniting and all kinds of things like that.
And this, by the way, is another tiny similarity between book and series, is that the first time they do it, it's on the floor.
Yes.
Another
technical.
I also have to point out, although I shouldn't, when Justin is listening to all of those voicemails, right, that Keisha has left him over a period of months when he has blocked her or whatever, do you know what that actually reminded me of? It reminded me of all of the emails that Mr. Big sent. The love letters. Reading the love letter. Writing the love letters, I should say. That then Carrie finds in the film.
And then runs into the closet to have sex with him.
Yes. So I don't know, again, if the writer of that episode of Forever was thinking of that, but that's
it always comes back.
It always comes back. It always comes back.
No.
So, okay, one more thing about sort of similarity or differences between the book and the series. So obviously it is such a thing in the book that moving into a sexual relationship is this... It's so much tied up with senior year questions because the really basic thing, we are so passionately in love, we are so committed to each other, we're now so intimate that the idea of going to college, different places is crushing. It's crushing. And we have to kind of do whatever we can to figure out the future.
The long distance relationship? Should we have the long distance relationship? Yes. And what do we want? The other thing that I really like that the series explored is what do I want for myself in college?
Yeah.
Which Keisha very much wants her Howard experience to be hers.
To be hers.
And to whatever that means for her. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go date a whole bunch of guys, but it means I want Howard to be mine. Yes. And she doesn't want Justin to go there with her.
Yes.
And she doesn't want him to sort of taint that experience or shape that experience in a way that she won't be able to figure out and grow and evolve in the ways that she wants to. And that to me is very, very important. And that's all entangled with the sort of who am I of senior year as it evolves, and it's very, very different in Forever, the junior year, where you don't hear as much about college. You certainly hear about Keisha and wanting to Howard and wanting to get the scholarship. But the senior year reads very similar, again, like Seth and Summer and Brown at the OC, and the application process, the essay, the early decision,
and people everywhere are only applying to one school, right? Again, we see this in Gossip Girl, right, in the OC and in Forever,
right?
One school. People just have a focus on one school.
And yeah, I mean, it is so interesting how the kind of granular level of college admissions really, I mean, at one point when Justin meets Keisha's father and he's sort of like, are you going to Northwestern? He's like, well, the deadline is December 15th. And you're like, oh my God. I mean, these people are really into when you get in, when you find out, you're committing, and that, there's no early action. there's no deferrals. There's no, I mean, in real college world, there is a way for Justin to apply and kind of figure things out and then decide, like later in April, whether he still wants to go. Now, granted, his chances in Northwestern might not be as high as if he had applied early decision. Still, he has the opportunity, if he really is unsure and he wants to visit let's just say some HBCUs and see what they feel like versus a Northwestern or a USC or something like that. And for some reason, Howard and Northwestern are it. And that's the end of it. And then it's this question of, well, how will they get to each other? Summers are planned, internships are planned, what they're going to do in the future in a way that I think high schoolers think about. But then you have to think about, but wait a second. Then we're going to go to college and we're going to meet people and we're going to have our own experiences, and what is that going to look like? And I do think the series really fleshes that out. For Catherine and Michael, all Catherine has to do is go to camp. And it fleshes itself out.
Yeah.
And it's a result. I mean, she sees this one guy.
It's done.
And she's like, oh, you're hot. And
and I can't basically be, and if I'm attracted to someone else while being madly in love with you, this is just so confusing and weird to me. And as I told you before, to me, that is such an 18-year-old way to think.
It is.
Right.
It really, and also an 18-year-old in 1975.
Yeah, agreed.
An 18-year-old now would be able to, I think, juggle multiple people. The idea that you can be attracted to multiple people and have a girlfriend and still think other people are hot, and all of that kind of rocks and rolls. But
I mean, go ahead.
I don't think the idea of forever monogamy, I can't even look or talk to anyone or even have like a quick peck with anybody, this has to be the end of us, is a much more old-fashioned concept.
I agree, but of course we're also talking, and in part I'm thinking about this because I just finished rereading Wifey by Judy Blume, a very different kind of book in some ways, but very similar in other ways. But of course you also have this 1975 moment, right, of still kind of like swinging, right, and free love, right, and ice storm sort of things, and the whole thing that Sybil, a character in the book, that she's basically having sex with everyone, right, she's super promiscuous, she gets pregnant just because she kind of wants to, in effect. And then gives up her baby for adoption. And so that also is interesting, right? Because in 1975 is not necessarily the world's most sexually conservative time,
right? It isn't, but I guess in the 18-year-old world of northern New Jersey, let's just put it, and of course all of Judy Blume's books are in the tri-state area. So I can see how that could be a concern for Catherine in ways that for these 25 characters, I mean, whatever the show takes place, but it's pre-COVID, right? It isn't as much of an issue. Yeah. And again, Justin is kind of flirting with that other character who was when he's in the vineyard.
Who flashes him.
Yeah, who flashes him, who's like his cousin.
I was kind of uncomfortable with that entire scene.
Well,
anyway.
I thought that was that his cousin?
It was one of those things, I think, where it's like our moms are friends, and so, because yes, I don't think it was actual, at least I hope it was an actual cousin.
But Keisha never heard of it.
Correct.
Or at least that we know.
That we know of. Yes, correct.
So in some ways he kind of put a pin in that, or just threw it away, or whatever. Never thought about it.
They get interrupted and it never comes up again. Because he sees Keisha almost immediately after that.
Right. So he was never like, oh, I was almost, gonna have sex with another girl, and so there, and Keisha can't, be in my life anymore. That isn't the case.
Yes. And so one of the things, of course, that is so kind of sweet about both book and movie, and then maybe we should start talking about Fast Times, is that in both cases, right, we really do have this sense of like the senior year sort of, and again, we can talk more about losing virginity later, but that these kind of intense, passionate, romantic, sexual relationships, that sex should be reserved, right, for this kind of falling in love moment. And again, and that is why the whole college issue becomes so complicated. It is. And this then is why, of course, Kath is so upset, because she does interpret her sexual attraction to Theo at camp as being as necessitating, right, this romantic entanglement as well. And as you say, right, that's not that's a very particular way to look at it. But I think it is really sweet, right, that even with Keisha and Justin, in this world of sex tapes on the phone, etc., that this is the model, right? This passion, this intimacy, that it manifests itself in a sexual relationship, right, that then sort of heightens the stakes, that it's not casual, right, nothing is casual.
And that both families have instilled in their kids that it's special and important. And of course, there's lots of issues about, girls getting pregnant, and Keisha's very, very, even though we don't see her doing anything about birth control, she's talking about it a lot. But the idea that both of these families have sort of, and again, the kind of vigilance that Karen Pittman has over these two 18-year-olds in her house is bonkers.
It is bonkers.
I mean, they're in the pool and they're like kissing, and the little brother has to come in and like jump on them, and she's constantly asking them to open the door, and that really felt very 1975.
I agree.
To me.
I agree. What did not feel very 1975 to me, I will say, is when Justin's parents find out about Keisha's sex tape. Right. And Karen Pittman's character says to her son, "Why didn't you tell us?" And it was like, what kid? Right. Oh, right. Mom and Dad. So my girlfriend has a sex tape with like some other boy from a year ago, and I just want to talk to you. Wait, how? Right. How would that even?
And that it would somehow be their responsibility to share it with
the mother.
When it isn't, it has nothing to do with them, and it's for the girl to decide or not to decide, and that a girl who's, I mean, again, 17, 18 years old wouldn't want to share with her mother that she has a sex tape. That's something you want to keep quiet if you're 17 or 18. Although it did have, obviously, this huge impact in terms of where she went to school, and people were ostracizing her, and it really devastated her in a lot of ways. And it was good that she told her mother about it ultimately. Yes, but it was her choice.
It was her choice
to tell or not tell. Yes. And I could completely understand why she kept quiet for so long.
Yes, I could too. And it really was that in a lot of ways, we don't see a lot of agency with either Justin or Keisha. In part, again, because of the Karen Pittman character, who's so controlling, that does even extend to Keisha. And so, yeah, I think then maybe we should talk about a more kind of like wild, free-for-all place where parents aren't even present. No parents. Invisible parents.
The Hamilton household at Fast Times at Ridgemont High is absent of parents.
They do not exist.
They're always at work that or traveling. We see in Fast Times at Ridgemont High are teachers and employers. And
the guy that Stacey has sex with.
Correct.
But again, we could talk about the losing virginity part again next week.
Right.
But so we're going to start talking about Fast Times at Ridgemont High, a treasured Gen X high school movie, very famously based upon a book written by Cameron Crowe, a young journalist who then himself became a very successful film director. Yes. What was also significant about Fast Times at Ridgemont High is that basically it contains everybody who then was famous later.
Right.
So many actors that then became really well known. And
directed by
Amy Heckerling.
Amy Heckerling, who then went to direct Clueless, as well as other things.
And was absolutely one of the earliest, most important female directors.
Yes, absolutely.
So such a fantastic film, really without a plot.
A film without a plot, and a very problematic film, viewing it in our 2025 moment in a lot of ways. But nonetheless, a treasure for anyone who came of age in the 70s and 80s, and there probably isn't someone in their 50s now that you can't find that can reference a Spicoli quote or talk about a red bathing suit with some sort of either creepiness or fondness, depending on who you are.
Wait, I'm trying to remember. Just a tiny. Did you watch? Have you seen all the seasons of Stranger Things?
No.
Because there's a wonderful, wonderful moment that, again, such a Gen X Easter egg, where a lifeguard who is supposed to be kind of like super hot, he sort of comes out of the pool and they start playing the Cars song. Right. And again, it's a sort of thing where every Gen Xer would start laughing. And my kids were like, "Why are you laughing?" And I was like, "You just
absolutely
can't know."
Right. Absolutely.
Anyway,
so Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which the most important thing about it, for the sake of comparison, is it is an hour and a half long.
And it moves
It is only a little bit longer than one episode of Forever. That movie jams along.
So fast.
Stacey
so tight.
is losing her virginity in the first 15 minutes of the movie. And that is something that really struck me. Watching it again, I've seen this movie many, many, many times, but I always rewatch. And the pace of it is striking.
It is striking. And so, because there are so many characters.
Yes.
So many things happen, as you say. So we have the central brother and sister pair.
Right.
Stacy is sophomore, and Brad, her older brother, the senior. Brad has a girlfriend, a serious girlfriend, Lisa. And both Brad and Lisa are spending their senior year thinking about what's going to happen. Then we have Stacy's best friend, Linda, who is the beautiful Phoebe Cates.
Right.
And some boys that they know who also work at the mall, because Linda and Stacy work at the pizza place.
Right.
At the mall.
So you have Mike Ratner, who works at the movie theater, and then you have Mark Ratner.
Mark Ratner,
and Mike
Damone. The evil Damone.
scalper.
Mike Damone.
Right.
And so one of the things that we mentioned before we started talking is how so much of Fast Times at Ridgemont High is about work. That we see all of our high schoolers working.
Yes.
And it's so we have Stacy and Linda at the pizza place at the mall. As you say, Brad is also at the mall. Even Damone is hustling his tickets.
Right. And then we have Ron at the stereo store.
Ron at the stereo store. Again, so kind of depressing. And so the idea that the mall, the school, and then certainly Stacy's house, right, are sort of these places where things happen.
Right.
And a lot of things happen.
And Mr. Hand's classroom.
Mr. Hand's classroom. And so
apparently the only class at that school.
The only class at the school where, of course, we have all of these fantastic exchanges between the burnout surfer, Jeff Spicoli, played, of course, by Sean Penn, which is so fantastic, and his continual battles with Mr. Hand over the hijinks that are happening in class.
Okay.
So what do we see really a kind of senior year preparation for the future, sort of high school stuff?
So in terms of the seniors, the main storyline, although it's very short, is that Brad and Lisa are going to decide to go their separate ways. Brad decides this first, but then gets fired from his job and then says to Lisa, I really need you. And she says, I think we should have our own freedom this year. So they are thinking about whether or not senior year means freedom or senior year means continuing this relationship or seeing other people and going off into the world of adulthood. And Brad, because he's been the employee of the month at the Burger Place, and sees his identity in his job and in his ability to also get other people jobs at these places, is also thinking, I'm a smart, successful guy, right? And when he graduates, maybe he's going to be the manager of some other
burger franchise or whatever.
Other thing, right? So these conversations are very adult conversations about what's going to happen next in the world of adulthood. You also have the Linda character who is engaged, which she's 18 years old. She's engaged to this guy, Doug, who we never see.
Is off in Chicago.
Who works for the airline. That's all we know. He works for the airline in Chicago. And he's very sexually experienced. And from what we understand, she's gotten all her experience from him or other older men, or who knows? And Doug could be 70 or Doug could be 25.
Yes, we don't know.
But that is the narrative of her, and so she is the sexual mentor, and we'll talk about this in our next podcast. But the sexual mentor to Stacy, who at the beginning of the movie is a virgin and is thinking about what her sexual status should be at this point in high school,
and is very much a Kath character, right? Again, a young woman who again wants to be sort of sexually experienced, is thinking about it a lot, sort of considering these things.
Goes about it in a very different way,
as we will discuss. But it is interesting because, as you say, so Brad and Lisa, they see senior year very much not as we're going off to college. Right? There's no indication that they are going off to college, but in the sense of like, this is beginning our careers as workers, and we are going to then get our full-time jobs, and very much in the sense that the expectation is perhaps they'll stay together, that they will get engaged, that they will get married, and that senior year isn't just, okay, we're still kind of finding our place, but we have found our place.
Right.
In work and in society.
It also is absent of traditional senior year milestones. So
Yes.
you don't see them having that college acceptance sweatshirt day.
Yeah.
You don't see them, you see a dance at the end, but you don't see the montage of girls getting ready for the prom.
Yes.
You don't see, senior ditch day or any of the things that appear in some other high school movies, and certainly anything made now, and things like Forever, right? Where there are, when Keisha gets into Howard, there's a big party, and it's posted on Instagram,
and the whole prom thing,
right?
Like the whole
There's
spread,
three proms in Forever,
Yes.
and there are no proms in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There's this dance at the end, but it's in some ways a plot point just for Spicoli to be late to it. And that again makes it feel like we are watching adults or watching people who are not necessarily going to college, or at least aren't talking about going to college, but are talking about promotion in their current jobs or moving on to other kinds of relationships, where Linda says, well, Doug's not coming to my graduation, and so I could do better. And so her aspiration are like to find a guy who treats her better.
Yeah, and maybe is even older. Right. But then we also have this weird sort of confusion in that sense in terms of class, right? Because nobody is talking about college, right? Because Brad and Lisa are very much like, we're just going to keep, being manager of the store or whatever. But at the same time, right, it's very clear that Damone thinks of Stacy, Brad's sister, as being very affluent, right? That the family has a pool, that, they have their little cabanas.
They have but they have a detached house.
They have a detached house. And so very much this sense of like, okay, in terms of mapping it, right? And again, and everybody works, as we just said. So the parents are always gone, right? Whether they're traveling, whether they're at work, who knows? They are total non-entity. But so there is this weird difficulty, right? In terms of saying like, are these affluent people? Are they not affluent people? Where are they? Because it's not mapping.
Well, one thing we do know is that when the Forrest Whitaker character gets the car, everyone is like, oh my God, this is the fanciest, nicest car we've ever seen. He got it from some alum, because he's going to play football, and everyone thinks that car is
like the shit.
like a Lamborghini. Yes. Okay. Everyone thinks it is the nicest car they've ever seen. On the other hand, Stacy is able to come up with $150 for the abortion on her own. And people seem to have cars. People borrow cars.
They're buying concert tickets.
$20 to see Van Halen and sit in one of, I don't know, the first 10 rows or something like that. But they are purchasing things. They are driving around. They're buying food. They're going to. We don't get the sense that these are scrappy kids. Now, again, Damone is interesting because he does live in what looks like an apartment complex and might be of a different class than some of these other characters. But because he has this kind of hustler, scalper reputation, or that's part of his job, and also he comes off as a lot older, and he probably is, a lot older than most of the characters. He doesn't track as a different class than them, although he might be working a little bit harder to kind of keep up with the Joneses.
Yes, although, I mean, one of the things about Brad is really interesting, though, because obviously Brad has the car, but it's very much the sense that Brad is not going to have the car if he doesn't work. Right. And so it's kind of difficult, right, to tell. But I agree. And that's the thing about Damone is that, he is this hustler. We very much see him, like literally, trying to hustle people to get tickets. But then, and again, we'll talk about the whole sort of abortion thing next week where he refuses to pay his half. But so we do have, and as you say about the car, this idea that the football player is dependent upon the largesse of someone else, right? But we then also have all of this, this freedom of Spicoli, right? Spicoli is kind of the big question mark. He's smoking a lot of dope, right? He has money. As we said, Brad at the end is like, why don't you get a job, right? Why don't you do something? Right. And there is just this set, and of course, at the very end of the film, right, Spicoli gets this gigantic reward or something, from after he foils the robbery. And so that's, in part, it is interesting to me, and of course this is something you know so much more about, just thinking about California, right? Sort of their part of
right,
California, right? Circa 1980.
Right.
And again, like, how much is Stacy's house worth, right? Sort of
Right.
where are they?
But the other thing is that when Mr. Hand, and I was really thinking about this because I'm, again, thinking about labor and class and other things, is that when Hand comes to see Spicoli at the end,
Yeah.
and you see Spicoli's room,
Yes.
I was thinking, does he live in a detached home? I was like, could this be an apartment? Could this even be a trailer? Like, it's this tiny little room.
it's tiny, yeah.
It has these wood panels. Of course, there's these naked women all over
Yeah.
the place, but it's very, very small. And the other thing about Spicoli and like the idea that his little brother's there, but again, no parents.
No parents.
He's going to what is going to be, I don't know, senior dance, but he's not in a tux. And I mean, that's very Spicoli, but all he does is like roll out of this VW van,
Yeah.
right?
Wake and bake.
Wake and bake, right? With Eric Stoltz and
Anthony.
Anthony Edwards,
Yeah.
right? But you never get a sense of these three guys need to find some jobs or do something, otherwise they're gonna not be able to live, or who's supporting them. And again, the absence of parental figures makes class very confusing because
Yeah,
we have
it does.
no idea what anyone's parents do. We never see like a teacher parent conference. We never see any of there's like toilet paper thrown all over the school. The thing is, it is so Gen X for the neglect of all of it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it just screams Gen X neglect.
No parents around.
Right.
You're raising yourselves.
Right. And again, you can throw toilet paper all over your high school, and your teachers may or may not know where you are.
And again, you're in the high school parking lot, like having smoked dope, and
right, and nobody is paying any
Nobody is
attention.
paying any-
and this goes
any
back to our
attention.
initial smoking
Yes,
comments.
absolutely.
And these are the kind of kids who would smoke with their teachers.
Yeah.
And this was so funny is at the end when Vargas, is that his name?
Yeah,
the biology teacher has like super hot wife, and she's kind of hitting on the students, and there's zero attention to the improprieties of all of it and how inappropriate most of it is. And again, for next week, we will talk a lot about the sexual dynamics and the, the age issues and the lack of consent issues. But for now, the kind of latchkey kid of it all really screams this moment in history that I think you could only really appreciate growing up at that time. And it's funny because my son who watched it with me said, were there kids like this at your high school? And I'm sort of like, no. But the vibe was there, right? There was nobody who came in completely baked with,
Oh my God, that happened at my high school all the time.
It happened at your high school. Okay.
Yes, it happened. Yes,
it did not. Again, I grew up in Judy Blume land.
Yeah,
it did not.
I did not.
It did not happen in my high school where kids came in like with clouds of smoke coming out of their car. It did not. But there were other dynamics that certainly did. And the mall vibes are real.
Absolutely.
The mall vibes and the
impeccable.
And the mall work, which is, as I told Christine before we did the podcast, the mall work in that movie is so spot on.
It's perfect.
It's so.
I worked at a pizza place in the main mall, and I just have to.
Did they have the coats that you could come back to collect if you left them there?
No, but there was a tabletop Ms. Pac-Man machine at the pizza place, which again also
beautiful
screams. Screams Gen X.
It's a beautiful thing.
Screams Gen X.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, so maybe the last thing that we should maybe say, and again, we're going to revisit so much of this from a different angle next week, is just the kind of irony. So Brad and Lisa, right, super, super adult, senior year, we're going to get married, have these jobs, but the relationship then, it's not passionate, right? It's not sexual as far as we can see.
Right.
And again, the parents are sort of gone. But then our contrast, right, is our forever couples who are, right, in a sense, not as adult.
No.
Right? No jobs, right? Nothing like that. Not as adult. and still so close with their parents in different ways, but then are having this, I love you, I want to be with you forever, maybe we'll get married in the future. And so I think that that's so interesting that the Brad and Lisa relationship, and of course they do break up very quickly in the film, but the Brad and Lisa relationship is just so like boring, right? It's not passionate, even though it's like, yes, this is
We've
our
been
future.
together for 2 years.
2 years, and it's just kind of like,
I'm done with you.
I'm done with you. Again, as opposed to these very like madly in love, what happens next sort of things.
Yes.
Okay.
What happens next in Fast Times is certainly not what happens next in Forever. And it is interesting, again, given how much of Fast Times is about sex, that what happens next really isn't about sex in the end.
Yes. And again, that is a nice segue to next time when we will talk more explicitly about the sex in the senior year relationships. Okay. So I think now we have some book recommendations. What is your book recommendation, Laura?
So this might sound a little unorthodox given that we're talking about 18-year-olds, but given that I have an 18-year-old and, thinking back to when he was little, I was reminded of a book called The Blessing of a Skin Knee, which is really about not being a helicopter parent. It is about
not being Karen Pittman's character.
Not being Karen Pittman. Letting your kids be a little more Gen X, letting them make mistakes, letting them do their thing, and the advantages of giving your kids a certain amount of autonomy in a helicopter parent age. And it was written by a woman named Wendy Mogel, who has some very good advice. And at a moment, I think when my kids were little and were probably elementary school age, and everybody was, packing all the allergy-free stuff and the different stuff and the 20,000 activities and the Johnny can't play with Joey because Joey has this sensitivity.
No playgrounds, too dangerous.
Right. It really kind of cut through all that bullshit, and it, not to say that allergies are bullshit. I mean, they're a real thing. But it really reminded me a lot of my own of the way that people in the 70s and 80s were operating. And so the book is in some ways a love letter to leaving your kids the fuck alone
and just letting them go out and play.
Yeah, let them go. Let them go.
I'll see you 6 hours later.
Go ride your bike.
Go ride your bike. Go ride your bike. Okay, well, my book recommendation is by Theodore Sizer, and the book is called Horace's Compromise, The Dilemma of the American High School. And Ted Sizer was a professor at Brown when I was there, and he taught a class called Going to High School in America. I think it was from 1950 to the present.
Unbelievable.
And this was this kind of class, right? Always super oversubscribed, right? Everyone wanted to take it. And he did some really serious educational reform, but very interested, right? What is that distinctly American experience of going to high school again with the dances and with the teachers and all of this other good stuff.
I love it. Yeah, I would have loved to have taken that class.
I would too, and I was never able to. So in part, it's my regret over never having taken it.
The perks of an Ivy League education, never being able to get into the classes that you want.
And I wasted them all. Okay, so now it is time for our harps and loves. Are you harping or loving this week, Lauren?
Well, I think that this is a week for some harping.
Harping.
Okay, so I'm going to harp. I'm trying to think because there are plenty of things to harp on this week, especially if we think about senior year and we think about graduation. It is also a very, very stressful time because while you are thinking about what is ahead, you're trying to plan. And one of the hellscapes that I'm now encountering, it's something I love as a faculty member, but not something I love so much as a parent, is the Office of Study Abroad.
Oh, Study Abroad.
Study Abroad, which sounds great in theory.
It does.
But in reality, it involves hurdle after hurdle of apply. Now, this isn't me. This is my child, kid, whatever we call it, adult in college. But the questions, because my student is not paying for these things, need to be answered. And my harp is Study Abroad office, please put out a letter or an email or a text or a blog or a something for parents that says, here's how much it costs, here's how the classes get approved, here are the specific classes that will or won't get approved, here's where you go, and here's what you're forking over on top of what you're already paying. These things are very hard to find, and navigating all of them has been taking way too much longer than it should. So study abroad, I love you, and I encourage everyone to go to study abroad, except perhaps people related to me. Those people can stay at the school that I pay for them to go to. And by the way, the idea that your child is studying abroad in some fantastic place and enjoying themselves while you are sitting at home going to CVS and, if you're lucky, anthropology is a sad thought. So there should be some parity in the kind of global experience of travel.
You know that you could do study abroad. You could actually lead a study abroad class next summer.
I think
so
that is
your wish could come true.
I think the idea of going to study abroad with a bunch of our cheating students, not to lead into your
this is a great segue.
But the idea of taking a bunch of chat GPT students who are going to chat GPT our trip might not be so appealing at the moment. But maybe I'll change my mind by next summer.
Something to keep in mind.
I will.
And as Lauren says, my harp this week is that how many students seem to be cheating in my summer class, but cheating in really bad, inept ways.
Oh.
I mean, the cheating game really needs to be sort of stepped up. Okay, and actually I'm going to have a related harp.
Okay.
Which is one of my pet peeves when students say, I don't want special treatment, but before they go on to ask for special treatment. Okay, just own it, right? If you're like, I want special treatment, just say. I mean, you're still not going to get it.
Right.
But the fact that you, sort of put that in front of the request for special treatment, it's like when people say, I'm not trying to insult you, but it's the same.
You look like crap.
But you look like crap. It just doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't work. So that's my harp. That's my harp for the week. That's it. That's my harp.
Yeah. Chat GPT and cheating has taken over everything. There are countless articles about this. There was just one in the Atlantic. But I do have to say, if you're going to cheat with Chat GPT, it is so obvious and it is so insulting that a terribly written paper is preferable. And I said that to 200 people. Please hand in a terribly written paper over something that your computer wrote that 50 other papers resemble.
Maybe, and this maybe should be the last thing we say.
Okay.
But again, another nice segue. Maybe the second season of Forever can have an entire at university Chat GPT episode where Justin is accused by some evil professor of using
Office of
GPT.
Academic Integrity.
Exactly. Well, on that note, I think again we will stop this part. We will look ahead to next time when we do part 2 of talking about high school and senior year and all of this other good stuff. But I think that's it for us, Lauren, for this time around.
Excellent, Christine. Well, these are some of my favorite texts to talk about, and I'm so glad we got a chance, and I look forward to our next segment.
I do too. Harpies out.
Harpies out.